Hi there, I'm going to do a review for the Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior. The movie came out in 1981 and stars Mel Gibson. Um, Sort of a continuation of the first film. Max is basically a stowaway, he's a wanderer of sorts. He's basically driving his car throughout the Australian outback because Australia is falling apart. There's a lack of energy. There's a lack of energy throughout the world. I think there's a narration at the start of the film that's basically describing the fact that the world has run out of energy, and the major tribal powers, so-called tribal powers, have got are running into severe energy problems, and they're in a state of collapse. This movie was, it's almost like it's a joke on what was going on in the late 70s and the early 80s. Both films were about an apocalyptic environment, about energy in decline. Um, and this movie's more or less, I think the problem with the Mad Max movies is that they all have a different narrative in them because they're not actually the same Mad Max per se. They're actually different Maxes. They're meant to portray a different person on a different story. Um, this movie starts out though with Max. He's been driving around and he's dealing with the usual problems, and he's trying to find as much gasoline as he can because that's what really matters to everybody is gasoline. There's lots of cars and lots of people trying to get around, and basically accidents are happening and people are trying to get each other's fuel. And Max instantly runs into a guy with a small little gyrocopter or something like that, and it's more or less they kind of uh, end up with a problem with them. Uh, it's kind of a, I don't know. It's definitely a fantasy movie because of course uh, it doesn't directly parallel with what happened at the end of Mad Max with the death of his family. It was more or less about the fact that now he's a drifter. Meets up with a gyrocopter guy who they're sort of antagonists. Like the problem is at the start of the movie, everybody's out to get at each other because they're all trying to get the last of the fuel supplies. So anybody who's got a working car, it's kind of like a top grab. Um, but what ends up happening is he ends up running into a bunch of people that are in the middle of kind of nowhere, and I believe that they are kind of on top of an oil pump jack platform, something like that. I'm not entirely sure what it is. Doesn't seem to have any purpose or point other than to be an oil pump jack. And there's an oil tanker there, like an oil tank truck, semi trailer truck. Uh, and they're dealing with problems with a bunch of bandits out in the desert. Currently, it's a bit of a problem for them because these guys come and go, and anybody who tries to leave incites the trouble of this group. And I guess that's the big joke of them, is that they're all having the same problems. Nonetheless, the group is trying to get a hold of that gasoline. Apparently, nobody in this world can figure out how to go without the gasoline. And nonetheless, this is the Mad Max movies. Um, the bandits are run by a guy named Lord Humongous, I guess. Awkward name. And who else is going on? It's a large pile of relatively unknowns. In fact, unfortunately, I think the best known character from this movie is ironically the feral kid. But I don't think anybody really knows anything about the feral kid. There's a lot of no names in this movie. It was like the first movie. It was made with a relatively low budget in mind. There wasn't much to it, so it's basically a movie about nothing. It's like just a silly movie. But yeah, they run into a problem. They're having to deal with the problems of these gang of bandits who are operating a whole pile of vehicles. Of course, they live by their own rules. They don't really have any rules. as evidenced by the fact that, like, when the feral kid throws a boomerang, and the boomerang is more or less supposed to be there to hit people in the head, and um, and also one of the characters goes to try and grab the boomerang and it slices his fingers off, so you can tell that they don't really have a code. Everybody laughs at the guy, of course, because they don't really have a code. Oh. It's a very inhospitable group of people, and unfortunately, that's the problem with the group, is that they're basically just psychos or whatever. They're crazy. And the group that's at the got the oil truck, they're trying. What they're trying to do is find a way through. They're trying to get through the crowd, and they want to leave and they want to start a new life in a much better location. And Max ends up finding them with the idea that he's going to find passage. So he ends up striking it. Like, originally he comes in because one of their people had tried to get out and he ends up getting injured. And Max brought him back in with the idea of making a deal to get gasoline and get out of here. And instead what happens is that they had to strike a deal in order. They say, well, we got a problem. We need to get out. We want to get out of here. We both kind of want the same thing. It's just that you're looking for one route. I'm looking for another. But nonetheless, they strike a deal with Max to drive the oil tanker and try and get out of town. And meanwhile, these guys are creating that problem. Max at one point does try to drive and get away, but and it ends up not working out so well for him. But yeah, it's not terribly bad. I believe it's the one. I believe there's a moment where Max actually tries to drive away with a supercharged car and thinks he's going to outpace them. Problem is, of course, he's got no peripheral vision. Apparently, he doesn't notice when somebody's ganging up on his car and knocking him out, and he wrecks his car. So he had to get back into the group. So now his car's gone. Nonetheless, they get the whole deal done where they're going to have him drive this car and go ahead and get through this group of bandits. All does not go as planned, of course. The group has been planning this for a while. They got a very bunch of weapons and equipment that they can use to try and deal with this banditry, but it's really just a stopgap solution until they can get free and clear of them and leave. But basically, they go on their merry trip, and this is, I think for the time, this is considered one of the most heavily equipped scenes for a car chase sequence ever filmed, because it is quite interesting at one point, where lots and lots of guys are doing lots of things, and basically the one group is having problems because, of course, these people aren't trained properly in combat. They're only doing what they can. They do not know how to do anything. But nonetheless, it's all good. They get a lot of stuff. They do get a little bit done. Nonetheless, the movie kind of ends on a low-key note, where it turns out they get rid of the group, they get rid of the bandits, they defeat them all. And the biggest thing is that the feral kid ends up performing his function of dealing with some bandits, but he's also he ends up in the truck with Mel Gibson's character. And it's kind of curious, because then what ends up happening is that it was a bit of a double cross, because ironically enough, these people apparently had no intention of driving with him. They didn't trust him. Actually, it's obvious at the end that he had no reason to trust them, and therefore it really was about just them using him as a decoy. Because in the end, the truck was full of sand. There was actually no oil in the truck. It was all full of sand. It was a decoy. The real fuel is in their vehicles, and they are going to try and get as far away from there as possible. They're trying to get to a different location so they can start a new life. And I guess Max has to go on his own way as well. And now he's befriending the gyrocopter guys, so they end up, I'm guessing they're going to form a relationship of sorts. And at the end of the movie, basically, we also get another perspective, is that this whole movie's from the perspective of the feral kid, because he says, we never saw this guy again. And I created a new band, and blah, 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 blah. And it ended up becoming that kind of a story. Nonetheless, it's alright. Yeah, it works out in the end. I don't mind the movie. It's actually alright. Pretty good movie. Nonetheless, it's coming. It's heading. There's a third film to come. But yeah, Road Warrior. It's got a classic rendition in it. It's kind of infamous now for its road chase sequence and all the other stuff that happens in it, because it's got a pretty crazy car chase sequence at the end for what it was. I think better, more heavy duty ones had been done later on, but for 1981, this was pretty extravagant. But nonetheless, yeah, there's Mad Max: The Road Warrior.